I think the biggest iron fist I dealt with was in DC. I think once you start dealing with like 2-3 Michelin stars, the stakes are high. I mean, you don't want to be the reason that the restaurant loses a Michelin star. I sure as hell didn't want to be that reason. And they make it very clear, like, you don't want to be that reason. Everything.
A veiled threat.
Yeah. I mean, everything was perfect. You know, someone was over your shoulder at all times. I mean, that was like the biggest under the microscope for sure.
All right, and just like that, we are back with Mind the Growth podcast. As always, I am Chris Kinghorn.
I'm Eric Hoffman, and today we have a special guest, Ben Wald, executive chef. Is that That's proper correct. Title?
I guess so.
Reserve?
Yeah, in Cafe Monarch.
Yeah, perfect. So we, as you know, have a love for food, cuisine, fine wine, good drinks, and I think Ben's gonna be our driver today to show us all of those in detail.
Absolutely. Ben, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have you guys in our space.
Yeah, thank you. You want to launch us off, Chris?
Yeah. So Ben, do you mind just giving us a little bit about your brief history for those watching who are, who's Ben, who's Monarch, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Personal history-wise, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, was there until I graduated high school. Went to Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. Graduated with a bachelor's degree in culinary arts.
Are you a Sox fan? Are you a Yankees fan?
I'm a Sox fan, but that's due to my dad growing up in Boston. So my whole, this is where it gets complicated there. But a Red Sox fan, we'll keep it like that.
I'm a Sox fan, so I had to just clarify that, kind of bring that
Clarified, up. Red Sox fans, we're good there.
Perfect.
Like I said, I went to school at Johnson & Wales, graduated with a bachelor's degree. I then, after that, studied in Paris at the School of Alain Ducasse. He's the second most decorated Michelin chef. He's the only chef ever with three Michelin star restaurants, one in London, one in Paris, one in the south of France. I mean, really an epic chef. I then moved to Washington, D.C. and worked at 3 Michelin star The Inn at Little Washington for about 2 years. COVID happens. I was furloughed. The world blows up. No one knows what's going on. There's zombies running around. And my dad lives here in Scottsdale. So I got in my car, I drove to Scottsdale with no plan, no job, no apartment, no clue what was to come, just to hang out with my dad. 2 weeks after living with my dad, if he ever sees this, I love you, but I didn't want to live with him any longer. So I'm like, what should I do? Should I get a job that's going to benefit my career or just something to get me out of his place for a little while? Right. I decided to do something that would benefit my career, or at least try to here. So I was hired here at Cafe Monarch as a sous chef.
Okay.
About 3-4 weeks after I started, we had this space across the street. They asked me if I wanted to open up Reserve, a new concept. I said yes.
And sorry to interrupt. Was that in the cards initially, or was that
no? That was never. That was never in the cards. At least maybe in the back of their minds it was, but never. Gotcha. For me, I was hired simply as a sous chef, and I was happy with that at the time. So I then took that position. About 8 months after that, they asked me to do both operations. So now I oversee both Cafe Monarch and Reserve.
So how quick does it traditionally take somebody to go from a sous chef to an executive chef?
Of 2 restaurants.
Yeah, well, just
two fine dining,
one in itself, and then you add 2. Just that.
It's just all circumstantial. I always say, like, being successful is half luck and half skill. I had the skill. The luck just happened that we had the space across the street, and I just capitalized on the opportunity.
Well, the fact that you got in your car in the beginning of COVID and took the risk and came out here, it's an incredible story.
It really is. I had no idea. Just no clue. I thought my whole thing was like, maybe I'll come to Arizona and then I'll go up in California, work at a couple, Michelin spots, or, move somewhere out west. I didn't even think I was going to stay in Arizona.
Right. All right.
So with your history with Ducasse's school, there's folklore that French kitchens are run in a very specific way and with an iron fist. How did you view that when you were in France, and how did that shift, if at all, when you were in Washington and here?
I think the biggest iron fist I dealt with was in DC. I think once you start dealing with like 2-3 Michelin stars, the stakes are high. you don't want to be the reason that the restaurant loses a Michelin star. I sure as hell didn't want to be that reason. And they make it very clear, like, you don't want to be that reason. Everything.
A veiled threat.
Yeah. I mean, everything was perfect. Someone was over your shoulder at all times. I mean, that was like the biggest under the microscope for sure.
Gotcha.
When I was in France, it was more of like the schooling atmosphere. That was tough, but I mean, there wasn't Michelin stars, being played with.
Sure. And who is the head chef at the inn?
His name is Patrick O'Connell. He actually opened up the inn 43, 44 years ago in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's more people that work at the inn than live in the town of Washington, Virginia. There's only 150 people that live in the town. I mean, it's so small. There's no stoplights. The closest grocery store is 30 minutes away. I mean,
how many Michelin stars?
3, right?
3.
Yeah.
How long have they been a 3 Michelin star restaurant?
The Michelin Guide went to DC in 2016.
Okay.
They were rated 2 stars for the first 2 years, and then they were promoted to 3 and have retained 3 since.
Were you part of the experience at 2, or were you?
I started the month after they got their 3rd star.
Okay, I would just be kind of curious to see what that transition would look like to go from 2 to 3. I mean, just taking it to the absolute next level.
I wish I was part of that 2-star team because, I mean, that is really an impressive feat to go from 2 to 3 stars. I mean, that's like the whole holy grail is 3 Michelin stars for any chef. I mean, there's only 120 somewhere 123 stars in the world.
Right.
Yeah. So, which is a good segue. When the hell is the Michelin Guide coming to Phoenix?
The Michelin Guide goes to cities with epic food scenes. It's not like, it can't just be me like doing awesome food or like, someone around me doing awesome food. It has to be like a whole city that's putting on an epic spread.
So what are you doing in the Phoenix ecosystem to help bring that attention here? What is that something that you are interested in getting active in? All the chefs out there, come on out to Phoenix and Scottsdale.
Yep.
Let's create an amazing food scene.
I think it's vibrant, but I'm subjective.
And I do too, but we both are. I mean, there's cities like Boston that I'm surprised don't have it. I mean, there's like, bigger food scene cities that don't have it. Maybe in the next 10, 15, 20 years, it comes out here. But at the end of the day, that's not what I'm in it for.
Sure.
Would that be a cool accolade? I mean, of course.
Right. And speaking of Phoenix in general, when you came here, did you go around to different restaurants to check it out? How did you land on Cafe Monarch?
So I actually landed on Monarch because I ate here. So my dad moved here in 2017, so I'd periodically visit. And obviously, me being a foodie, I've gotten him into the food thing. And he was living on 68th and Thomas, a mile down the street. Mm-hmm. So we just came for dinner. Me, my dad, and his girlfriend sat right over here at this table, had an awesome experience. I never thought I'd work here, but then fast forward, I moved here and I was like, you know what? We really had a good time at dinner that night. Maybe that would be a good spot. Maybe. I didn't know.
Sure.
I had nothing else on the table.
Yeah.
I just was
going for it.
Well, it's definitely top of Phoenix restaurants wise, this is one of the top.
Totally. And
if not the top, in my opinion.
Since you've been here, do you have any other, maybe a top 3 list of places you like to go?
When I go out, I tend to go out to like have a good time and not necessarily analyze food. I analyze food every day. That's like my living. So I tend to go out, and have a few drinks.
Try to turn it off.
Yeah, and enjoy myself.
Enjoy it, yeah.
Nice.
Makes sense.
All right. With your position here, obviously you're in fine dining. And there's lots of different styles of restaurants, but in general, a 20,000 foot view, where do you see the food world and the food business going in the next few years?
I think there's 2 ends of the spectrum for that. Everyone's on like the sustainable kick, and I think that's huge, and a lot of people need to do that. But there's also like that niche market of the super fine dining, and what people don't realize, I think, is like in order to be super fine dining, it's very hard to be super sustainable. If we're looking for the perfect plate, there's a lot of waste involved. We do our best to limit waste and, use the waste product in other ways. But I think those are like the 2 things are like, if you're a smaller scale restaurant, being sustainable, that's how, getting sustainable product, keeping your product, margins close. But then when you get like that super fine dining and you're charging a premium, people have an expectation of what's on that plate.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
And what do you think in general makes a restaurant fine dining? How do you, in your mind, classify that? Is it technique? Is it cuisine, type of cuisine?
I think fine dining is experience driven.
Okay.
It has to do with the food. It has to do with the service, the plateware, the ambiance, the glassware you're using. if you're sipping nice champagne out of a plastic cup, that's not fine dining. You're drinking awesome champagne, but I mean, that's not what fine dining is. So it's the whole experience. Like, is the food epic? Are the drinks epic? Is the service like, holy shit, like this is the best service I've ever received. These people are taking care of us. They seem to actually care about, how we feel about the food. That to me is what fine dining is.
And as the executive chef of both Cafe Monarch and Reserve, what's your role in looking at both back of the house and front of the house?
I oversee all back of house operations. The front of house, if I have an opinion, I'll make it known to Christian, who's the owner and general manager, and he'll kind of take it from there. But as far as back of house operations, that's
your bread and butter.
That's my bread and butter. So menu development, scheduling, hiring, firing, cleanliness, sanitation, the way we have like standard procedures for certain things. Those are all things that I will oversee.
Cool. And in terms of fine dining, do you have an opinion on what the most overrated and the most underrated ingredients are today?
Overrated and underrated. Interesting. I don't know. I
Ben
don't
also
know.
goes as Truffle Daddy every once in a while.
Yeah, Truffle Daddy, is that the
very much
nickname?
so, a very big truffle guy. So.
I think when it comes to the fine dining, like you need, like we're saying, that bread and butter. Like I love truffles, I love caviar, I love foie gras. Like those things, like will always be a mainstay, especially on Reserve's menu. And also, I mean, we offer most of those items on Cafe Monarch's menu as well. But as far as underrated things go, I don't know if it would be necessarily an ingredient, but rather technique and how you go about using ingredients. I mean, I could hand you the best steak in the world, but you could hammer, if you don't know the technique of how to cook it, the steak's no good.
Right. Sure.
So underrated to me is the technique of cooking.
And what technique would you say you use most often?
It all depends on the ingredient, but it's just having that background knowledge of how to use whatever the ingredient is that you're using.
Let's use steak as an example.
Sure.
How would you cook the best steak in the world?
Again, I mean, it depends on what steak you're using. At Reserve, we use A5 Wagyu, which is known to be like the best steak money can buy, highly marbled, highly fat. I mean,
Which
we're talking
prefecture?
We use Miyazaki.
Okay.
Miyazaki.
That's a good one.
Which is a good one. That's like the most known, along with Kobe.
Yeah.
But the Miyazaki to me is the primo one.
Nice.
And we're using the strip loin over there. I mean, we'll sear it on both sides, baste it with butter, thyme, and garlic, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. At Cafe Monarch, we do use a sous vide technique. So we'll sous vide, sear, baste, and then sell.
Okay. Gotcha.
So we've talked about Michelin star pretty frequently so far. I'm assuming most people listening understand what a Michelin star is. For those who don't, Ben, can you just give a quick summary of kind of Michelin, the star, the process, the difficulty, kind of what that looks
absolutely. Like? Absolutely. So Michelin is what everyone is the tire company.
So you can get new tires and be recommended for a very nice dining experience all within one company.
Right. So the whole thing was like Michelin wanted you to buy their tires and then use them. So they released a guide of restaurants so that you would travel with your tires. Okay. To go to these restaurants.
It makes
that's
sense,
where it
but
all
I had
started.
no idea, so.
Yeah, so that's where it all started. It's a Paris-based guide, at least for the food, and it started all in Europe, and then I want to say in like 2013 or 14 came to the States, but just New York City, and then has since spread a bit. Now the Michelin guide's in New York City, DC, Chicago, and all of California.
Okay.
And they release a rating system, 1, 2, and 3 stars. 1 star, I believe their thing is good food of its kind. 2 stars is worth a detour, and 3 stars is worth a special journey.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are like their one-liners based on their stars.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have random inspectors who go into these restaurants unknown. It's not like, hey, I'm with Michelin.
Right.
They don't want people knowing that who they are, so they get like the experience that you would get. Or
so maintaining
get,
consistency, obviously, then is extremely important.
That's the whole thing. Is like you could be the Michelin inspector or the person at that table or the person at that table. And then they release the guide based on service aspects, food aspects, and this and that. But it goes, like I said, from the 1 star to the 3 star. With the 1 star not being easy to obtain, I mean, the 1 star is still tough to get up to the holy grail of the 3 stars.
And is it true that there has to be a certain amount of courses in order to qualify, or how does that work?
I'm not exactly sure of their qualifications. Yeah, I'm not, and I don't believe they want it to be exactly known, but I don't know.
But every dish has to be, if you've got, let's say, 8 dishes or eight you've got a whole experience of 8 different plates. if one of those does not meet the criteria,
You're toast.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's tough.
You're
No
toast.
pun intended.
Yeah.
It could be a good toast.
It could be.
Very good toast. Just a little bit
We
off.
got good butter too.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask you to put your business hat on. So in my mind, there's different ways to be successful in the food world, and there's different types of businesses when we're talking about restaurants. So being at the fine dining end, how do you in 2021, which we are right now, going into 2022, believe that a fast casual restaurant would be best suited to reach success financially, a nicer sit down restaurant, and a fine dining restaurant? How do those compare in your mind?
Sure. I mean, to me, right, I'm putting my business hat on. At the end of the day, a business is to make money, right? So in my opinion, and it shows, around Scottsdale, you can make money here doing the fast casual up to the fine dining level. It's just figuring out your market and how to attack and how to make money in that sector of the restaurant world.
Sure. And do you have an opinion on ghost kitchens and where those play a role?
I think it plays a role. It's just not my, it's just not my jam. I'm more of the, I'm the hyper fine dining. At some point, maybe I would do, more of the fast casual or the casual sit down because I do enjoy that. But as far as the ghost kitchen goes, that's like out of my realm. That's not my totally. Department of restaurants.
Totally. Where do you see yourself with Reserve and Cafe Monarch or outside of this world in the next few years? Do you have specific goals in mind to reach here? Do you have other concepts in mind in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can go on and on about that, but as far as Reserve goes, that's kind of my baby as I open that, along with my chef de cuisine, David Brito, who's been with me since the start. I mean, I think our goal with that is to...
So Reserve has been, sorry to interrupt, Reserve's been going, this is your second season, correct?
This is our second season. So those of you who don't know what Reserve is, it's a 14-course tasting menu. It's all located out on our back patio, so we closed for the summer as it's so damn hot in Arizona. Right. We opened in October of 2020. And then went up until May and then closed for the summer and reopened October 1st of this year for our second season. We branded it as a season 2 and just revamped everything. We only kept one menu item from last year and everything else was new. And
how did you decide changing of the menu? What was the process that kind of went into that, deciding what you were going to keep? And I guess if you only kept one,
we only kept one item as it was like our bread and butter, if we're going to keep saying that. It was like everyone's favorite, so we kept it. It's a sweet corn pudding topped with Maine lobster, tail, and Parmesan. I mean,
I've had that. It's incredible.
Yeah, just a hit. And then everything else, David and I kind of sat down and brainstormed what items we wanted to have on the menu and then kind of built the menu around that.
Did you find David or did Christian find David? Where did he come from?
So I was aggressively looking for a sous chef at the time for over there. And it's tough to find people with hyper fine dining skills in Scottsdale and Phoenix because there's only a handful of restaurants. And David was working at Kai.
Okay.
One of the best.
Another one of the best. I mean, the only Forbes 5-star restaurant in the state, which is pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. And he was
Forbes, if you're listening, Reserve, Cafe Monarch.
They're coming for you.
Yeah. And he was furloughed along, with me and everyone else. And I had a bunch of ads up. He reached out and it just worked. I mean, he's a younger gentleman too. I was kind of looking for someone who fit like my vibe and it just worked out. And he's been with me from the start. And I mean, he's an incredible talent, an incredible asset to myself and to the team.
And how old are you now?
I'm 24.
Wow.
I'm 24, yeah.
It's a great story for the age of 25.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, lots of years ahead. So another segue, past Reserve, have you thought about anything in the future, whether it includes this or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this time, I'm invested in Monarch and Reserve. I mean, I'm trying to take Reserve to places that hasn't been as it's so new. We're really trying to make a name for itself. Cafe Monarch, at least in the Valley, has a name for itself, and most people know what Cafe Monarch is.
Yeah.
When I started at Monarch, I said to the owners, this is a machine that runs well. I just want to help it, run a little bit more efficiently. But with that, that's the machine that I built or helped create. So now we're really trying to make a name for Reserve because the space is epic, the food is epic, the service is epic.
We'll get some shots later too, so
absolutely.
the viewers can kind of see. Kind of just switching back to the menu again. because of the world that we're living in with COVID, was there difficulty? Did you have to design the menu in any way, shape, or form based on any sort of supply chain issues or restraints, or was that a factor when you guys were creating the menu?
I work pretty closely with a lot of high-end purveyors, and luckily with the beast of Cafe Monarch,
Right.
it helped reserve, forge relationships a lot easier, as we spend a lot of money with a lot of people, and people want our accounts.
Maintain the relationship.
Yeah. So I mean, there's
Absolutely.
like some small supply chain issues with, having trouble getting this, having trouble getting that, but nothing that was like detrimental to our kitchen.
Sure. Travels. Where have you been overall in terms of food cities? I know you've been to France. What would be your number one go-to city in the world to travel to eat?
That I haven't been to.
Either you
I've
have
done-
or haven't.
I've done
Let's try
some-
both.
Sure. So I've done like a decent amount of travel in Europe. I mean, I've been to a lot of France. When I was in Paris, I went to the south of France, central France, north France. I've been to Barcelona, London, Rome, Florence, a lot of northern Italy. As far as places that I've been, I mean, I'd love to go back to Paris because I was a student. I didn't have a ton of coin then, so I was
Sure.
balling on a budget. I'd love to go back and, spend some money. As far as places in the States, I mean, I don't think anywhere comes close to New York City. I mean, the food scene in New York City is epic.
I would
Been
agree.
back to eat since you've
I have a lot of friends in New York, so I
Right.
periodically go and have a good time.
Nice.
To say the least. As far as places I haven't been, I'd go to Tokyo. Number one, Tokyo.
So my top two is Tokyo and Copenhagen. I've been to both, and they are, bar none, the best cities I've ever been to in the world.
I think Copenhagen right now, I mean, is probably the
Insane.
top dog. I mean, Noma
Yeah.
just got rated number one
Right.
on San
Yep.
Pellegrino. I mean,
I got to meet my boy over there,
Rene Redzepi.
Rene. Yeah, Mr. Rene.
did you have a brain fart?
I had a little bit of a brain fart.
I came in for the same.
Yeah,
don't
thank you,
worry.
Ben.
That was a big introduction there.
Yeah, so quick anecdote. My wife and I went there 2 years ago in 2019 before COVID, and we got tickets to their summer season when it was the full vegetable menu. And so we show up. I brought my camera because I like to take photos when I go out to nice places. And we walk in to get seated, and Renee is just standing at the pass and just welcoming guests. So I was like, "Hey, Renee, what's up?" He's like, "Oh, hi."
That's
And I'm
awesome.
pretty sure he thought we were like famous bloggers or something because we were dressed up. My wife's very pretty, and so he just followed us to our table. And he's like, "How's it going? What's happening? Can I get you guys anything special?" And we talked for like 15 minutes.
Awesome.
And then 2 days later, we went to Hija de Sanchez. It's a taco spot that one of his sous chefs at Noma opened in Copenhagen. So we went there because we were familiar with it. And him, his wife, and his kids were standing right next to us in line.
Wow.
And he said hello again. He's like, "Oh, I'm seeing you everywhere." That's my famous chef story.
Hopefully he's watching.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't really get starstruck with celebrities or famous people like that, but chefs, I have a soft spot for.
Yeah, I mean, his story is pretty incredible as well. I mean, they were rated, best restaurant in the world 3-4 times in the early 2000s, and
Yeah.
then to come back and do it again in 2021 is really impressive.
Wild. Yeah. And the people that have come out of his restaurant are the best chefs in the world.
Yeah, when I was in school, I applied to do an internship there.
Yeah.
And it was an unpaid, unhoused internship. So, I mean, you're not getting paid, you're not getting put up.
No,
And there
but
was this whole application process. I straight up wrote an essay for an unpaid, unhoused internship, and they're like, "No, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wow, I can't even go work for free." I'm like, "That's insane."
I would bet they get thousands
I
of
mean, I
applications.
can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I feel like it's him and maybe Thomas Keller that have the most alumni that have turned into 3 Michelin star restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in the U.S., I mean, Thomas Keller's reach is far and wide.
Yeah. So that's interesting about your travel spots. What about types of cuisine? If you had to eat a specific type of cuisine.
I love eating Asian food.
Yeah.
I love eating Asian food, mostly because I don't cook it. I deal with a lot of the European ingredients, a lot of European techniques, but I don't, cook. I don't deal with a lot of the Asian ingredients.
Nice. All right.
Are there any chefs out there that you feel that you either look up to or maybe potentially model your technique on, or have you kind of taken a few and made them your own? How does that look like for you?
A lot of my background is heavy French. I mean, the Inn is an incredibly French restaurant. My studies in Paris, obviously, and then culinary school is heavy French technique is taught. So that's like where my heavy background comes in. So I'll like keep up with a lot of those chefs, but now like I've been trying to shift and like forge my own path of like what my cuisine is, what my food is.
Right. Do you feel like you've done that with Reserve? Is it kind of a statement of who you are and kind of what you've become as a chef?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a statement of what of who that team is.
Right.
It's not just me. It's not just, I don't run a kitchen as a dictator. People don't want a 24-year-old, dictating
Right.
a kitchen. That's not how you have a successful team. And at the end of the day, I'm only as successful as the team at both, restaurants. I can't run the show. I can't cook everyone's food here. I can't cook everyone's food there. So I think that menu over there has really forged into what that team and who that team has become.
What does the team look like for the Reserve team?
Sure. So I oversee that operation. Then underneath me, we have Chef David, who, like I said, came from Kai. He's the chef de cuisine. So with me running back and forth between the streets, that's like he just focuses on Reserve.
Okay.
And then underneath him, we have a slew of cooks. Right now, we're running 3 cooks and a dishwasher. Okay. So that's just a team of 5 all day over at Reserve.
Give us an idea, or I guess the listeners and viewers an idea of the main differences between executive chef, chef de cuisine, and sous chef.
Sure. So it really all depends on like how big the operation is. Like last year, it was just like me, and then David was my sous chef as I was like mostly at Reserve, and then we had 2 cooks underneath us. But as the operation grows, there's like normally an executive chef who will oversee whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 restaurants, however big the empire gets.
Okay.
And then like chef de cuisines at each restaurant where that's their focus.
Okay.
That's their focus. So he's like my point of contact. If there's issues going on over there, I'll go straight to him. But as far as, so there's the executive chef who oversees the chef de cuisine who's like of that restaurant,
Focused,
and then the sous chef who would be that right-hand man.
Their assistant,
Makes sense.
And with regards to your day-to-day now as executive chef, what does that typically look like?
Sure. So I work like 6.5 days a week as it stands right now.
Thanks for cutting us into your half a day.
Reserve is open 4 of those days. So the days that Reserve's open, obviously Monarch is open 7 days. So I'll bounce back and forth wherever I'm needed. During the prep day, I might be at Reserve. For more of the time, I might be at Monarch. And then for service, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, just helping out where need be.
And are you actually cooking, or are you just making sure everything's in order and making sure everyone's got consistent cuts?
It just depends on the day. I'm never like, I very rarely like work a station where like I'll come in, prep a station, then work that station. Mm-hmm. I'll very rarely do that. If there's like call outs or like, stuff is crazy, then I will, but it's pretty rare that I like am cooking your steak.
Sure.
Rather overseeing like the steak leaving, the salad leaving, the 3rd course scallop leaving, just making sure that everything's running smoothly.
Cool. And because we live in 2021 and there's more of a focus on alternative ways of eating, what's your viewpoint, and do you even allow for modifications on the Reserve menu for like lactose intolerance or gluten-free, things of that nature?
At Cafe Monarch, we'll take any dietary restriction. At Reserve, we're a little bit more picky as that menu is really a beast and there's only 5 people putting it out. Over there, we'll do a vegetarian menu, a gluten-free menu, and no nuts.
Okay.
That's it. There's
so
no other.
No dairy-free.
Dairy-free, we will not accomplish. We just won't. It just, at the end of the day, what we want to put out is the most epic experience, and we feel that a dairy-free menu isn't
what
our best
stands
work.
For, yeah. Gotcha.
And the best part about that is it's like, if you want to eat dairy-free, we have another beautiful restaurant that, you can do so.
Literally right across the street.
Right. So,
it's not too far away.
We don't feel as if like we're turning people away, rather shifting them to what suits their needs.
Cool.
Makes sense.
Let's put food aside for a second. What other hobbies and interests do you have?
I'm like consumed by the food world. I love drinking wine. I love learning about wine, learning about food. So probably wine. Like I love going out and drinking wine, having some cocktails, enjoying my time with friends. It's been nice. This is the first time I've lived in a city with a family member since I was 18. So it's nice that I'm in the same place as my dad. So I try and get with him when I can. But I'm pretty consumed. My life is consumed in this world for sure.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have one sister. She's a school teacher in the DC area.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wine. What's the last few bottles that you've really enjoyed, if you can remember?
I took a trip to Napa in July. That was a pretty epic experience. I went with the owner. We have a lot of connections out there due to the volume of sales that we do in wine. So, I mean, it was pretty epic. Like, we were drinking Camus with the owner. I mean, we were at Opus One with the director of their sales. I mean, that was probably like the most memorable wine trip I've had as of late. In 2018, I traveled to Bordeaux when I was in France. I mean, that was epic in terms of like being in a new spot. I mean, being in Bordeaux, I mean, that's like the holy grail of, red wine.
Right.
Yeah.
French or California?
Money aside, I tend to go old world and drink the European.
Do you think that comes from
your experience?
Yeah, especially with the education.
Maybe it is, and maybe it's like the nostalgia thing of like, if there's like a nice Bordeaux, like I'll tend to order Bordeaux,
right?
Over I feel like people drink like Bordeaux or Burgundy if they have like French red wine, and I tend to go Bordeaux.
That's fair.
Yeah,
but I also love champagne. Like, I love champagne.
What's I guess, going back to the last few bottles of champagne that you can remember, what's been a favorite?
I got unbelievably lucky probably 2 or 3 months ago, and we had a gentleman in who was kind enough to share Krug Clos de Ambonnet, which is their highest bottle. I mean, on our list, we have it for like 5,500 or 6,000. I mean, something outrageous. And I was lucky to share a glass of that. And I mean, that was epic. I think once you start dealing with those wines that are so expensive, it's almost like the clout of it. It's like, holy hell, like I'm drinking this bottle that's, $6,000 or $5,000 or $4,000, or whatever it is. It's like, wow, I think it's like you feel a lead, or it's like you're drinking the hype, behind it.
And if my research serves me properly, you are doing a tasting menu with Krug, correct?
Yes, it's on the plans to do like this epic 12-course menu. Krug every year they do like a collaboration with themselves of a certain ingredient, and this year it's onion.
Okay.
So we're in the plans to do a Krug and onion dinner that's all paired with.
And that's at Reserve?
That's at Reserve, yeah. That's only going to be 10 to 12 people. I mean, we're talking like 1,500 a head.
Person.
That's a big boy dinner for sure.
And is that how you drank the $6,000 bottle?
We just had a gentleman in who was kind enough to share. I just got lucky with that one.
That's awesome.
Got lucky with that one.
Cool. Any final thoughts on what you want to share with the viewers, your goals for next year?
Goals are high. I mean, we want to push Monarch to places it's never been. Like I said, it's been a machine that's running, for 8 years under this ownership. Here we do that 4-course menu, and then at Reserve, I always say, my one-liner for Reserve is it's just Cafe Monarch on steroids.
Yeah.
So if you want some steroids, go over to Reserve. If you want the 4-course, please come to Cafe Monarch.
Nice.
Perfect.
Well, we really appreciate your time and you spending some time with us, telling us about your journey.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to season 2 of Mind the Growth podcast, where we'll have you back.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.